Gordy, when did you decide you were going to be in the film industry?
Well, I made a film, Super 8 film when I was 12 that I starred in and cast the neighborhood kids, shot the whole thing, wrote it, and showed it in my garage, sold pixie sticks, sold admission. So I don't think there was ever a time where I was not thinking about writing or making films, so telling stories in that way. So there wasn't like I was doing something else and then I was like, oh, I want to pursue this. It was like, I mean, when I was a kid, I made a film and told a story. So it's always been with me.
That's cool. How did you get the word out about that the garage screening?
I think we probably made my dad worked at Xerox, so we probably made a flyer and then did a mimeograph. This was in the 70s, so it was something like that. We probably handed out flyers and we just told everybody. I mean, the whole garage was filled with every kid in the neighborhood. It was pretty, yeah, I think we had Laurel and Hardy, like little Super 8s that we showed in the garage and stuff. It was a whole thing. We did pretty well.
That's cool. You didn't have to worry about getting your tickets back from the theater.
No, it was like I think that was the last profit, I made for quite a while. It was a lot of fun, but yeah, that was one of my earliest memories. I still have that film too.
So from the garage screening to the idea that, okay, I'm going to do this as an adult, how did that take shape?
I think, I started working on a play maybe in my early 20s, and then the playwriting went into screenwriting. At some point I was like, I had in my mind to write a screenplay, and I wrote a screenplay over 20 years ago about the black market for organs, and it was just sort of this. I wrote like a first draft. I don't think I even finished I think I wrote almost the whole draft, and so that was my beginning into screenwriting and pursuing it obviously as something. I wasn't writing it as a hobby. I think I was writing speculatively to eventually make my way into the industry and get paid and be a professional. So. Yeah, but it was like I said, it was always in me of that period. I think through my teenage years, I was acting, and then I was acting a little bit into my 20s. So I was always around the storytelling, and then, like I said, I worked on the plays, and then I wrote a screenplay. So
that's interesting. What about the black market of organs intrigued you so much that you?
I don't even remember the idea. I just remember that I don't even remember what happened. I know I still have a hard copy of it somewhere. I wrote it on one of these old Macs before Final Draft or any of those softwares even existed. And I don't remember what the story was, but I just remember it was like some, dominatrix type woman in a black leather suit that was punching people out, and there was some sort of organ. I mean, I should go back and read it, and finish it, like I do often with the other things, and I've had success doing that. So, but yeah, so that was the path to that.
Right. So it wasn't a Disney film, obviously.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. It was not. It was. Yeah, it was sort of it was probably a year or two after Pulp Fiction, so there was probably a little bit of that influence. I think there was that influence in the early 90s of sort of that kind of, maybe that kind of characterization of violence and sort of kitschy or whatever it was. I literally have not read that in forever. So all I remember was the first screenplay I wrote was about that.
What was your first success as a screenwriter?
Well, my first obvious success was Love, Liza. Writing my second script I wrote was a drama. I wrote it in '96, the fall of '96, and 6 years later at Sundance, it won the Sundance, the Waldo Salt Award, and it was bought by Sony Classics and released by Sony. And yeah, that was definitely the first sort of obvious success. I mean, I'd had other things like Option and things, but that was like sort of the conspicuous success. And you know, my brother, my little brother, I showed it to him Labor Day weekend, 1996, and we were both back at my mom's house, and we both happened to be there. And I said, "Oh man, you got to read this." And I just written the first draft. I said, "I think this is kind of good. And I don't know. I think this is kind of cool." He read it and he was like, "I want to do this." And he had not shot Boogie Nights yet. He was about ready to shoot Boogie Nights that fall. And so that fall he shot Boogie Nights with Paul Thomas Anderson. Paul Thomas Anderson read Love, Liza and actually gave it to Michelle Satter at Sundance, and they considered it for the lab, the Sundance lab. So that was very exciting. I ended up moving out to LA in February of '97, and then we started the process of trying to get the movie made, and then eventually it was shot in 2001. Kathy Bates was in it, yeah, so that all that stuff felt successful. You know, I mean, the idea that, you know, Sundance was interested, and you know, it's great because, I mean, you know, I just had a short film that I wrote and directed at Sundance in 2015, and Michelle Satter is still there, and she came up to me, and you know, we still know each other from when she called me on the phone, and I was in upstate New York in the fall of '96, and she interviewed me about Love, Liza. And Paul had referred the project to them and said, "Hey, you should check this out." And she, you know, responded to the script. It didn't get in to the lab, but they were always tracking it, and then obviously it was accepted. And Paul's movie, Hard Eight, was developed. It was originally called Sydney, and his first feature was developed through the Sundance lab too. So that was the relationship with the lab that Paul had. So yeah, so all of that stuff was exciting, I think, but the most popular sort of thing that people would say would be that, oh, you know, Sundance, you won the award or whatever. But there was many other things that populated my professional career that were like, oh, this is exciting, you know.
When you sat down to write Love, Liza, was that in your mind that it was going to have a trajectory like that? And did you expect...
I sat down to write Love, Liza, and you know, I'd been driving a cab for 3.5 years in Chicago, and I had just quit like about a month before because I'd sideswiped a limousine, and I was sort of having this like mental breakdown or whatever, and I was like, I just want to write, and my family gave me a little bit of rent money, so that summer I just didn't work. And I was like, I gotta do something. And so I remember August 5th, it's very clear. I woke up and I had written like 2 pages of it, and I wrote in like 18 days. I just sat there and wrote the whole thing. And I always wrote it with a sense that I would play the guy, or not really like I would play the guy, but I did write it with a sense that, what if I was gonna play the guy? And that really helped me as a writer, you know. It was like, it really got me, I don't know, haven't really done that a lot since then, but I should probably think about that sometimes because it was really effective. I was like, what if I played this guy, you know? And it was that Orson Welles-y type of thing where it was like, I'm gonna do everything like sort of when I was a kid. And I did this, so I wrote it like that, you know. I didn't write it for my brother, and I showed it to my brother just because I was like, this is good, man. You know, and I knew it was good. You know, and I gave it to him, and he was like, I gave it to him like 10:30 at night, you know, or something, and he read it. And the next day he was like, I just read the whole thing, you know, and he totally responded to it. He was like, I want to do it. And you know, I think it's like historically look back and people are like, it looks like I guess it was like 2 brothers making this movie together, but my brother ended up being Philip Seymour Hoffman and doing all these other things. So historically it looks like one thing, but he actually was just an actor who was like, I want to do this role, you know, because it was a cool role. It was hard as shit, but it was, you know, he liked it. And then we went on this journey together, and, you know, and so yeah. So that's, I'm not sure what the question was, but yeah, you know, so that was what it was.
Yeah, did you expect this type of journey? And it sounds like that wasn't what you set out
No, it was
to do.
like, it was like, no. You know, you don't expect all sorts of things, you know, and then I didn't expect it would take so long, you know, to make it. You know, it was like, there were so many things you're like, oh my gosh, you know, and you didn't expect it not to do all sorts of things. And then you expect, you know, but we're very lucky because we made a film that a lot of people, there's plenty of people that it's their favorite film, you know, and it's like, I think that's the thing that a writer, I tell people, it's like, the greatest success is if you can write somebody's favorite film. You know, like if they have like a poster of your film, and you might write something that like, but if they're like, you write something and that's their favorite film, you know, it doesn't get any better than that, you know, because you're never gonna get everybody to like your film, and the money is gonna always disappear. So as long as you have somebody come up to you, and I still have people coming up to me and are moved by the film, tear up when they talk about it, and they go, oh my God, you wrote Love, Liza, you know, and it means something to them. And you're like, so it's fortunate, because that is the kind of thing that has guided me, because it's like, nothing else matters, like, except like giving your audience that experience. And if you can get that to people, and have some people think it's a crap or whatever, and some people think it's a nepotism job, or, you know, whatever, and it's just like flimsy or whatever, it doesn't matter, because it's like, it's a personal experience. Films are personal. There's plenty of people that, I love Citizen Kane. I think it is genius, and other people just hate it, you know, and it's like, there you go, you know, so.
Were you thinking about the characters while you were driving before the limo accident? Were you know, because you sound like you had a lot of time.
I came up with the idea for Love, Liza because I was when I was driving a cab, I came up with ideas all the time, you know, and it was one of those ideas. I just saw a woman, maybe she was homeless, something, but she was by the gas pumps at a gas station. You know, as your taxi driver, you're living at the gas station a lot. And you're always there. And I saw her, and I was like, and it just put in my mind of this idea of like a yuppie, which is not an acronym that's used anymore, but it's like a professional white guy in a suit suddenly starting to huff gas. I just saw this guy is like huffing gas. And that was the germ of the idea. And then I had to come up with a motive. And then I came up with the motive, and then I started writing it from there, and then I created everything from there, and I came up with like a sort of a MacGuffin-y hook, so to speak, around, you know, 10 minutes into the movie, and it's that hook sort of drove the movie, and then I just, like I said, I just sort of splatted it out, and I honestly, you know, I probably could have been rewritten a bunch more times, you know, it just wasn't. But it did get rewritten, and I did fix a little bit, and as a baby writer then, you know, so that's where it came from.
How much time today, in 2018, do you dedicate to writing?
I write, I don't write in a disciplined way, in like a timing thing, like, oh, you know, certain hours of the day, every single day, Monday through Friday, or anything like that. I'm one of those guys that sort of writes in bunches and writes certain times. So there's certain days that I don't write. I wrote 5 pages this morning. I did not do that for the benefit of the Film Courage interview. I just was like, yesterday I was like, I need to, like, I really want, and I'm on rewriting this thing, and I've been going around and around with it, and I started really totally different approach on this script. And so I was like, I need to start really, I have 2 projects that I'm working on right now, both of them to direct, and both of them have gone through a lot of different development, and there's people involved and already producers and stuff, so, and I want to make one of them next year. So I'm just like, I really need to, like, you know, and I found myself bored, getting really frustrated with this one thing and realizing it's like, I'm at that point where I was like, I really just, oh man, I don't know if I can figure this out. And I was like, you gotta hang in there, and I did. And then I came up with a way in to open it again. And so I wrote like a page on Friday, because I had this idea for the opening, so I wrote the page, and then today I wrote like 4 more pages, so I'm like around page 5. Then I sent it over to my staff. I send my pages in, and they kind of take a look at them and give me like quick feedback on like if I'm going the right direction or something like that. And then this afternoon, I'm gonna go to the other project where I'm really outlining it, because it's a heist. And so it's like I've got to do a lot of architecture stuff with it. It's like, whereas this other thing is a very much like a Love, Liza type of movie where there's a protagonist and they're on a mission kind of thing, and it's that kind of a piece. So it's very much an extension of like Love, Liza, but in that structurally a character arc kind of thing, but I'm going to be directing it, so.
You said about getting bored, and so when you get that signal that just nothing's happening, what's your process? Do you kind of
You
sit
cannot
it out?
abandon it. Every script, you get bored with something, that means you're actually getting somewhere with the movie. People are amateurs primarily because they can't get through the professional period of hating what they're writing, bored, frustrated, looking at every page going, I hate all these scenes. I'm like, ugh, there's no magic here. I'm not enjoying myself. It's not gratifying. So you have to suck it up and get through that period. You can't, I'm bored. You're just gonna go right back to where that point is again. So everything I've ever, there's a famous quote from Kurosawa about this that I look at almost every single day, the quote, and you should put it up on your little thing with this video maybe, because people probably ask about what it is, but it's basically, he talks about every script falling into despair, and he uses the word despair. And despair is a strong word, but that's exactly what that is. It's like I can't figure this out. I don't know how to figure this out, and I really want to start with this, because this other thing, I know what to do with it. I'm going to start it, and it's going to be okay. Not knowing that, or not remembering that everything you write, you come to that place of despair, and the artist, the writer, the director, the actor, whatever, has to walk through that period of like that sort of desert period of the creative process, or they're not going to, because then something will click. And that's what happened, is I hung in there with this one thing where I was recently going, and then I came up with an image, and I had some input from somebody, like just a life experience, and I had an incident. I sort of was like, what if I move it and I started over there? And I do that, and all of a sudden I had an idea, and then all of a sudden I was like, okay, this is how it is. And I cracked my problem, and suddenly I was like, okay, I'm back in the saddle. I got this thing going. Now I can incorporate the other things I've been working on that I still like, but I got through that period of just discouragement.
So is that something that when you're, quote, in boredom, that you have a ritual for? Because I'm sure
it's not a ritual. It's just the ritual is staying patient. People don't have any patience. They don't have, corporate structures, I think, don't allow for patience when they're making studio pictures and stuff. It doesn't, it's like when they announce a release date and the script's not done. Well, that's counterintuitive actually, because that's like, okay, I'm gonna show you this, but I haven't written it yet. That creates dysfunction. And so that's why I think a lot of bets are off, and that's why you have projects not really work out. You go to a movie, you go into the theater, and you're like, what just happened there? And it's very difficult, because it really eliminates the principle of patience. Because you're not gonna be like, well, let's pump the brakes. This thing needs about 6 more months. I gotta figure this out. Can we move this release date back for a year and a half, and tell the Disney stockholders that, the Star Wars movie is not going to come out for 4 years because we want to make sure that the script is good. you know, and that's not gonna work. So, and that's okay. And it doesn't mean that you can. I mean, the guys who wrote Casablanca, I mean, you know, you can write under duress and it can be successful. Having deadlines and structure is fine. I mean, it's like, but overall, when you are stuck, having patience and being like, do not give up, do not relent, hang in there, and don't like change gears, just hang in there. And I did, and it didn't, a couple weeks, it was maybe a little bit of time, but I was kind of going, oh God. And then all of a sudden, but I kept telling myself, no, just keep hanging in there. Like, what can you do here? You're not going to move off this. You have to finish. There's nothing palatable about working on this script at all. It's just, there's nothing there. You want to start working on something else. You have a number of ideas that you're so much sexier, attractive, you want to jump into, but it's like, you can't let go of this. You have to hang in there. So I always so whatever the process is, doesn't matter. It's just exhibiting patience and realizing it's like, if you hang in there, the path is going to open up. According to Kurosawa, the path will open up, and then you'll be like, oh, and then the light bulb will go off in it. And that's what's happened with everything, really.
Apocalypse Now, you don't want it to become your, what is it, Heart of Darkness? Or did you see the documentary?
Yeah. You know, it's really good, but that's also part.
But
I think that, I mean, absolutely. I mean, if anything, you know, what Coppola was doing with Apocalypse Now is having patience and hanging in there. Because there were a lot of places you want to give up, but you have to fight, you know, you have to fight through knowing and also maintaining, like, no, I have to tell the truth. I want to be original. I want to be compelling. I want to make imaginative choices. I'm not going to like, because, you know, to get through the darkness, you're bored or you're stuck because you're not giving up and you're not like compromising. You know, you're not saying, well, no, let's just shoot it anyways. It's good enough. It's already done. Who cares if we haven't figured out the third act? Let's just do it. It's good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. You know, I had a filmmaker say to me once, Gordy, it doesn't have to be perfect. And it's like, you're right. It's never going to be perfect, but what it's implying is like a little bit of like disregard of like, who cares if you know something is kind of crap, or it does not believable, or it's not logical, you know, or it's not vulnerable, or it's not clear, or whatever. All the problems. If you're aware of problems, but you're like, well, who cares? You know, then you're not going to make somebody's favorite movie that way, right? So.
when did you begin BlueCat Screenplay competition?
I started BlueCat in 1998, so it's 20 years ago. It's over 20 years ago. And I started the competition. I thought, oh, this could be a good side business, or I don't know, like motives were sort of like, you know, like, oh, this could work. And it was a long time ago. It was before everything, really, before MySpace. It was a long time ago, and every script was sent in hard copies, and people sent in personal checks. It was a long time ago, and but yeah, that's how it started. And it started off very small. For the first 4 or 5 years, I got like 200, 300 entries. You know, we only accepted features. You know, so.
So why did you start it?
I probably started it to make money. You know, that was probably the reason. It was like, oh, this could be profitable, and I'm a writer, and I just saw it was an entrepreneurial type of impulse probably, and yeah, and it started, and it was like, that is not a good reason to start a screenplay contest. You know, it's like making money is not like, it's turned out to be like that. If you want to make money, do something else. But it ended up being like immediately very gratifying. And it's made me, I cannot repay what BlueCat has done for me as a writer. I love to teach. it's made me a better writer, maybe a better storyteller, and I love helping people. I love helping writers. Love helping people, but I love helping screenwriters. And immediately when I gave that first check to the winner, and I met them and took them out to dinner, and it was amazing, And so it's still, we just had a reading of 2 of our winners that are local. We had them over, we had actors, we read the short and the pilot. They had all their friends come, and we did reading, we had a pizza, and I gave them the checks in front of their friends. And, it's to be able to support writers, it's ended up, so, sometimes you start something out and you're like, oh, maybe this would be good, good business, or something that would be cool to start off. And, there's a niche, a market niche for this or something. But like anything else in life, you start something off and it ends up becoming something else. And you're like, I didn't expect this, And now BlueCat's gone through a lot of iterations and growth patterns and things over the years, but I really fight for it, and I really love it. And there's been times where I probably had an opportunity to let it go, but I just thought people love this, and it's brought so much, given so much to me, and it's given my life so much meaning that I don't really want to know what my life's going to be like if I'm not doing BlueCat and somebody else does BlueCat. I walk away. So I still get so much out of it. So it's really great.
It's an interesting trajectory to things when you start it for one reason and then it goes through all these sort of evolutions or whatever. And I'm sure there's times with everything it's stressful, but then you kind of imagine what would I do waking up and I'm not thinking about it.
Well, we've been really good at it. That's the thing. I mean, the bottom line is there's not too many things that that we're good at. Me specifically, I'm not an expert in a lot of things, but I've been very, very good at picking people who are finalists and winners, and they tend to go on. And we just were talking today, the Castle Rock episode directed by Anna Lily Amapour, and she was our winner 10 years ago, and she's a member of the Academy now. And there's, one of our finalists wrote Papillon, another finalist wrote Nutcracker that's coming out the end of the year. One of our winners wrote another script. Now I forgot what the name of the movie is, but it's coming out at the end of this year. Maisie Williams from Game of Thrones is starring in it. That's gratifying, is I have an ability to recognize this is a special writer when they're submitting a screenplay contest, and we give them a little love, we give them a little money, we give them a little recognition, and we say, keep going. And our ability to recognize those people and give them a little encouragement, and then people are able to look and say hey, BlueCat has an eye. The industry definitely recognizes now that when we announce our stuff, they go send us the logline, send us the scripts. We get the script requests because they all understand that we have had a track record over the years of identifying people when they're amateurs that eventually go on staff, make movies, write specs, whatever it might be. So, and that continues. So I think that's another thing that has always kept me close to BlueCat and wants it to continue to grow and develop and become bigger, and because of our track record. And realizing that if I gave that away, that's not easily transferable. You can't just be somebody else just pick. Clearly, whatever we're doing with our readers and how our process and my process and my eye and my experience as a writer myself and developing things in myself, all of that creates an environment where BlueCat does find people. Sales pitch or not, you can take it for whatever it is. The fact is that that's what happens with BlueCat. That's why people are attracted to it. If people aren't ready to submit to any competition, they shouldn't enter. And if you're never ready to submit to BlueCat, you don't have to enter BlueCat. But I think that's why, personally for me, why I continue to honor the organization and continue to support it and want it to stay healthy, because of the impact it's had on people, and because it on a personal level, it provides me you know, substantial meaning to, you know, and purpose. You know, it's like, you know, I feel grateful that I'm able that BlueCat exists for people, and that people enjoy submitting to us, getting notes and all that stuff, that mechanism. And me not wanting, like I said, there's not been a, maybe there's been a couple forks in the road where, okay, like if you're making, you know, if you're a professional writer and you want to make films and you're working on your films, do you have room and space for this, you know, to continue to sort of manifest BlueCat or whatever and run it or manage it or whatever? And the answer is like, you know, I got to dance with what brought me. I mean, the fact is that the process of working with writers has obviously benefited me personally. Like I said, the last thing, it's, you know, it's not on a material level. It's really overall, it's my ability to be able to express myself. A 12-year-old kid that made that short film, it still supports that kid, you know, as me being able, just right now talking to you about screenwriting, you know, this goes back into my own work and my ability to express myself. So
from what you've seen with the screenplay competition, what would you say most new writers, baby writers, have trouble with? Poor opening or a weak ending?
Well, I think writers in general struggle with endings. I think that's why I think there's probably a lot of television shows that have been developed or pilots, because it's like, well, I don't know where this is going, so let's just write a television show. You know, let me just write a pilot, and then, you know, I'll figure out the ending later, because the ending is probably the hardest thing. It's probably the most elusive thing for even films that have won Best Picture, to not be able to wrap things up and in a truly classic way, with some sort of magical, imaginative, powerful, cathartic, surprising, revelatory ending. I think that in general, endings are always tougher. So I imagine probably people starting off, I think they're able to get started more easily than to finish something. Absolutely.
For yourself personally, which of the two did you think in the beginning was one of your traits that you had?
I think that, again, I think sometimes I have the ending and I know what the ending is, or I have an idea of what the ending is, and I don't really know other things. And then the other times I don't know what the ending is, and I struggle with, like, I don't know how this is going to end, and then you're trying to solve that, how you're going to end. But so it goes project to project for me, and I don't think it's an automatic, like I can never have an ending. I always, like with Liza, I always had an idea what the ending was, you know, but with the short that I made that went to Sundance and called Dog Bowl, I didn't know where it was going, you know, and the script that the two projects that I'm working on right now that I want to direct, that's like one or the other is going to probably happen in 2019. One has an ending, the other one doesn't. So I'm so either one of them, there's no set pattern to that. It's just sometimes you have a vision and you go, ooh, there's an ending. That's awesome. And then, you know, and then other ones, it's like, you don't really know like what the kind of clicker at the end is. So I have not found that people, writer to writer, people are good at one thing versus the other. I have found that writers tend to struggle with endings. I mean, it's obvious. You watch movies, you know, great first act, great second act, sort of, and then where did this go in the third act, you know? And so you definitely have some problems with that. So the ending is very difficult, and I think that writers need to embrace that. It's good to just be like, it's really hard, and respect that endings are difficult. And again, that's that humility to hang in there and be like, okay, it's difficult, but I'm not going to settle for less, and I'm going to hang in there until I have a good ending. I'm not going to just sign off because this is too uncomfortable, because I don't know how to solve this, and I want this to be over, and I'm sick of this script, so I'm just going to use this ending. That's not how you move forward. That's not how you move, and that's not going to be, the audience is going to know what's happened. I mean, we know. I mean, there's countless movies that have come out, best pictures, that don't know how to end a movie. And you clearly understand as a writer, for me, and as somebody who's judged a screenplay competition for 20 years, has taught on the university level, blah, 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 has advised people on screenwriting, I can look at a movie that just won Best Picture and be like, they didn't have the ending. They did not have an ending, you know? And I'm not gonna, like, I don't wanna throw anybody under the bus. So don't ask me, but like Shape of Water, which just won, I don't know when somebody's watching this video, but it had an ending, didn't it? It had sort of a revelatory ending. I did not expect the ending. Maybe some people guessed the ending, maybe, but there was an ending. And it was sort of a surprise, and it brought things to a close. It was an actual proper ending to a movie that was actually kind of ascendant and nice, you know. But that often doesn't happen. It's very difficult.
Why screenwriting versus novel writing? Like, I'm thinking when you talked about getting bored with something, it reminds me of a book I was reading about David Foster Wallace and how he did not like the screenplay format, but he loved novel writing. So why choosing one over the other? Why? Or it's just, that's what...
I don't know. It just happened that way. I think it's because I wrote theatrically as a young person, and then going forward, it went into screenwriting because I loved movies and stuff, and I always loved. Maybe I was because I was an actor for a while. Never thought about writing a book ever, you know, and. I understand that, like, writing a novel, you can just, you know, like, I guess you can just write anything you want. It's a very different form of writing. Screenwriting is very difficult. So I imagine that somebody who's a novelist would feel a little challenged by that and would rather write a novel where you can just explain every thought and feeling of every single person and explain everything. But a screenwriter has to describe only what a camera can shoot, and somehow that's going to be used as a document with a bunch of other collaborators to create a motion picture. But so yeah, but I've never had impulses to write a novel, but I can understand why. And there's not a lot of transfer. I mean, you know, Stephen King doesn't write screenplays, and not because he can't. He probably has no interest. I don't know what he wants to do, but there's not like, it's not like, oh, you can write a novel, you know, or like, because I've been writing you know, I'm a screenwriter and I've been writing screenplays for more than 20 years. I could sit down and write a novel or a short story or whatever. It's not easy. You know, it's not easy to just even sit down and write a play if you're a screenwriter. You know, it's very different. All these things are very different.
What would you say is the most common overused way to end a script?
What would that be? What would be the common way to end a script? I don't think there's a real common way. I think the problems, the endings that are problematic, and maybe a better question, I think it usually is when a character does something against their own motives, the motives that you've just defined for them earlier in the movie, that go against their character. So they do something like that a choice at the end that makes it go like, wait a minute, did that just happen? Like, you don't expect them to do something like that. Or, you know, something where there is some sort of fantastic ending that doesn't mean anything, something that's implausible, that's something that is unlikely. Again, character doing something unreasonable or circumstances. I mean, you can look at Get Out. Get Out was a masterpiece. And the only thing that was probably problematic for some people, and this is a massive spoiler alert, so if you have not seen Get Out, stop watching this movie. And if you're watching this video, you should have already watched Get Out. So we want to go and watch Get Out, and then you can come back and watch this movie. So there's your spoiler alert. But at the end of Get Out, when his friend shows up, who's the security guard, it seems like something that was unreasonable and not logical. And I think the filmmaker probably recognized that, but he had built up so much goodwill with us that I was willing to accept that a TSA agent, he was a TSA agent, was able to somehow find him. And I suspended my disbelief, but that is a perfect example of like a film that is a masterpiece, but even how to end it. And I believe his original ending was something much darker. And they decided not to do that, and so he came up with something else. That was he probably didn't choose that original ending because of a logic issue, because he had so much control over logic in that picture. But at the end, he did choose something where we had to suspend our disbelief a little bit. But when the goodwill's been built up by the writer so much and the filmmaker, the storyteller, then we can sort of forgive it. And we did sort of forgive it. Some people maybe not, but I did. I said, maybe that's a little, but it is in the realm of possibility that the TSA guy could somehow track him and find him. And I could let that go. But so I think the common problems often involve logic and characters doing something, motives and decisions that are out of character within the character. Wait, well, would they do that? Why would they do that? Why would they make that decision? And to get out of the movie. So, yeah.
Tropes a beginning screenwriter should avoid that a more seasoned screenwriter can navigate.
Wow, that's an interesting question. These are like very bizarre questions. I mean, it's just like, okay, I don't think there are tropes that a seasoned screenwriter are able to navigate. That's like a red flag. Like I'm like I don't want to do that, mommy. Like I don't want to do tropes that I'm not supposed to do when I'm a baby writer. It's like we need to tell honest stuff. It needs to be original. It needs to be plausible. It needs to be emotionally available. It always needs to be like that. That needs to happen on page 10. It needs to happen in the first 10 pages. It needs to happen between page 62 and 72. I mean, it's all over the script, and we can't ever not traffic in that currency. I just like we don't want to ever be like, well, later you can screw around and trick people. And I mean, obviously there's things that happen where you get better control, but I just can't. It doesn't, that intuitively doesn't feel like that a seasoned writer's ever going to be able to cheat an audience in a more effective way, and they're going to learn tricks or something that I mean, there's things with timelines and cheating time and tricking an audience in terms of moving, like letting the audience, sort of knowing the audience, like fooling around with a calendar and being like, well, all this is happening, and it feels like it's happening over a course of 8 years, but it feels like it's also going to be happening over a year. And there's things that are sophisticated that happen, but I think that's like saying, well, it's not a trope though. I mean, that's just structure. That's just like, when I started off writing, 25 years ago, writing a play, having 3 people having a conversation was confusing to me. It was like, okay, who's talking to who? Like 4 people talking, it was difficult to hear that conversation in my mind, let alone have a 150-page script, which I just wrote on contract, with 4 different arcs happening in 3 different locations, all kind of coming like, it was so sophisticated that it was like way out there, that for something, I never would have been able to do something like that. Even probably 10 years ago, it was too difficult. I still look at it and go, how did you do this? It's so sophisticated in terms of its structure, keeping all the balls in the air, keeping everything believable and clear, and not forgetting anybody, and not crowding your cast, all those things. So, I don't know about that question. That's a tricky question, and I don't know. I hope somebody else can figure that out, because I don't think that there's tropes, that there's other things. There probably are things that some other teacher will be able to answer, but I think that I don't want to ever promise a new writer that, oh, you'll be able to use tropes, which suggests something that's overused you'll be able to use those later when you get more seasoned. I was like, I don't want you to ever do that. I want you to always listen to your voice, write what you believe in, write what you really want to write. And that's what we want to give our audiences, and that's what we want to think about as our audiences, and not like, what we're going to be able to get away with later when we know everything or something, So dangerous.
Gordy, we had a question come in earlier from Twitter. It's a lady named Mexi, and she's from Australia, I believe. And she says, I would love to see interviews or discussions on developing secondary characters. So any thoughts on developing secondary characters?
Well, your cast size is always a concern because you have to give each character enough real estate in your script to create enough moments, emotional moments, that the audience can relate to and identify and connect with. And secondary, primary, supporting, if you choose to have a character that you're going to develop, you can arc them out in the same way. It's like, what is the beginning, middle, and end of this journey of this character? I wouldn't get too concerned with theme or how they relate or whatever, but if you're trying to develop any character, you want to be like, well, what is there, do you have enough scenes where the audience can relate? And are they going on an emotional journey, an interior journey, an external journey, whatever, the combination of both? But it's the same, you build it the same way as any of your characters. You want to create enough moments where the audience can see themselves. So it's plausible, emotional, high stakes stuff where the audience can see themselves reflected and they identify and they sympathize. So it's the same things. That's how I look at everything. I don't get caught up in formulas as to where things are supposed to happen in stories. I think it's mostly you want to focus on, and I don't think there's a lot talked about with characters, so it's a very good question. But mostly it's the screenplay only has so long. You only have 2.5 hours to go, right? Or something like that, hour and a half. And you want to have as many moments, because a relationship is defined by the volume of moments that we have with the person. If you have coffee with somebody once a year, then if they pass away, you have one kind of emotional response. You have coffee with somebody every day out of the whole year, that's going to hit you more. So in a script, if we see that secondary character or any character, and we're able to see them in different contexts, go through different things, and there's a greater volume of access to them in different days, different times, different locations, doing different things and bouncing through this plot. That's why cast sizes are small. That's why Casablanca, basically it's a story about 3 people. That's why Harry Potter's 8 movies basically around 3 people, really around one guy. But there's 3 people. I mean, there's other characters, but we are not asked to connect with a bunch. When you have something longer like Game of Thrones, you're able to connect with more people because there's more real estate. But that's only because there's more real estate, and that's how we find our way in to the main characters. But still, there are a few that garner most of our attention.
If you had someone sitting in this room out here, this beautiful lobby, who'd never written a screenplay, and you were going to give them a 5-minute screenplay lesson, you had 5 minutes, how would you start it? What would it be?
Well, I would just tell them, I'd ask them if they had an idea, and then I would just say, pull out your laptop or your notebook with your pen and start writing it. I wouldn't even tell them about format. I would just be like, describe the movie. Everybody knows what a movie is. Everybody's seen it. Our visual vocabulary is so high, especially now, 2018, 2019. I mean, anybody can describe it. The problem is when we start educating people, we're like, read these 6 books, take this course, do this stuff, watch this video, like it's like.
But not this video.
Yeah, no, I mean, you can watch this video, but that's what I would do. If somebody was like, I want to write a movie and I don't know anything about it, I'd be like, what do you want to write about? Like, what's your idea? And they probably have the idea. They're not like, well, I don't know what the idea is. They're going to be like, well, actually, I want to write about this guy who wants to do this thing. And I'd be like, okay, start describing it. Just describe it. And then I might say something like, don't describe their thoughts and don't describe their feelings, any character. Don't describe the insides. Just describe what you would see on a movie screen. Just like, and exterior house day, man walks across and gets in the car, drives away. Do not care about doing anything wrong. Just spill your guts. Just tell us the movie. Write down the whole movie. We'll figure all that other stuff later. You can figure out where things are supposed to be later. You can figure out everything. I mean, there's so many stories about that where they didn't know what they were doing. They wrote Bridesmaids that way. They didn't know why they bought Screenwriting for Dummies or something like that, right? So it's like that fresh voice. It's like, it breaks my heart thinking about all the people that think they have, because we've created this industry where it's all coded and they got to go you got to learn. You have to learn structure. You have to learn this. You've got to learn all these things. You got to know what a screenplay is, man. You got to know what the rules are before you break them. That's all crap to sell books and all sorts of stuff. It doesn't. God, please bring them in that don't know anything about movies, and maybe we'll have better movies. I mean, that's the problem. It's like all this other stuff. It's like, bring in that person. It's just like, as a teacher, I have had people come in with formatting that's just like, they don't know they don't have access to final draft. I don't know what they're writing. And it's the most authentic slice of life, funny, succinct, observational, genius stuff, and they don't know. And the reason why it exists is because they haven't learned anything about screenwriting yet. And then once you start teaching them, then all of a sudden they don't know what they're doing. Then they lose their emotional connection. They lose that story. 4-year-olds know how to tell a story. They know how to tell a story. Ask a 5-year-old, what happened today at school? Well, we went in, beginning, middle, and end, the inciting incident. You can tape it. You can go, inciting incident. So you guys should film course should do. You should interview a friggin' 10-year-old and then put the little flags in and be like, wow, they know all the structure already. So I don't have to go to so-and-so person's course, or I don't have to take Gordy's class or anything. You don't have to spend any money and keep your voice. That's the most important thing. It's like, don't lose your voice. Don't lose your instincts, your childlike instincts for telling stories. It's like, that's what guides us. And I always go back to that. I'm like, I don't care. The thing I just wrote for somebody that in all likelihood people who are watching this video will see, I don't know what the structure is. I don't know where the act breaks are in it, and it's over 150 pages, okay? It was a writer, and it's probably gonna be seen by people watching this video, directed by a very, very good top director. This is going to happen, and I have no idea what the structure of that is. I literally just took my ideas, plotted out the thing. Now, am I following the rules of character and emotional engagement to like develop and everything? Things you can reflect back on and be like, how do I make this better? But when you're telling me, when somebody's like, what's the 5-minute version of like somebody wants to write a movie? They watch this video, what I just said.
So you've just given us 5 minutes and 18 seconds of advice to someone that's never written a screenplay. If you took that same advice, let's say it's 1995, you're in your cab, you're listening to like Alanis Morissette, I don't know, it's Chicago, you see the woman at the gas station, the pump, which has sparked this idea. You didn't even know it was going to be a thing yet. If somebody had been sort of this Jiminy Cricket in your ear, squeezing in this, well, you've got to know this structure and you need to read this book, do you think you would have abandoned the idea?
I don't know. that's sort of a sad thing to think about, but I think that there's a lot of people that get discouraged today because they do feel like they're doing something wrong. And there is that element out there on the message boards, on podcasts, very popular podcasts that talk about black and white, define things in black and white, and it's dangerous. It's just like, people have tried to figure out where this industry is going and where storytelling is going in our culture all the time since I've been working to write screenplays or whatever. And I've seen all the different iterations of like, well, you're not able to write, you shouldn't write anything, period. You shouldn't write anything about the industry. You shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. And all of it's been blown up. You shouldn't write anything. I mean, like an online bookseller, an online bookstore wins like Oscars now. It's like, don't tell me what anything black and white is anymore. So it's dangerous. And so we can talk about like the rules of why people care about movies and like the sort of the laws of emotion. And I think no one's gonna really get freaked out. I think that's sort of organic stuff. But when I started off, I read Michael Haig's book but his book, and I don't even remember, I don't think he talked a lot about formulas or beat sheets. He might have talked about, the only thing I remember from Michael's book was encouragement. Like he just empowered, he gave me hope, he definitely encouraged me. And so that's what I always responded to. And I responded, he seemed to have a sense of like, that people, it was rare for something good to be written, but he did find it possible. And there were things that he was very much, it was a hopeful book. So I think that's the only thing I got. I think that was the only screenwriting book that I ever read a lot from. I don't know if I read the whole thing through, but I would often refer to it. But then when I started, I just was like, I literally just, I was like, oh, okay. And I knew something about page 30 and page 60 or whatever. And I sort of tried to follow that, and I didn't find it difficult to remember that something was supposed to happen or something like that. But I was very much on my own and I wrote whatever, so, but I that's why I think that we, it's very important for people to remember, you don't have to learn the rules to break them. You can just ignore them. If you feel like you're being expressive and something's cool, that you're writing something's cool, and then you start showing it to other people and other people think it's cool, then that's the only thing we care about. Because we would not have any Fellini, we would not have Orson Welles, we probably would not have Kurosawa. Eventually people have to stop listening to what people are suggesting. And nowadays, people being told they can't direct, young women, people of color, diverse, voices that are like have been discouraged or whatever. And all those people, I just be like, get out of my face. I want to say what I want to say. And that's the only way we move forward, with this art form, is when people just say, I don't care what I'm supposed to be doing or who's supposed to be directing or who's supposed to be writing. The only time we move forward when people are like, well, let's follow, and on page 23, this is supposed to happen. That's when everyone wants to blow their brains out. It's like, I want something new. And that's why things like streaming and like episodic television did grow, probably in response to formulaic feature writing. It's probably one of the reasons, because people were like, God, can I watch something else that doesn't feel like everything else? And it's because of formula and because people were following what they were supposed to be doing. And it's like, not good.
But some people have sort of a punk rock ethos, and that's in them, and they've been that way all their lives. And others are the one in the front seat of the class that want to raise their hand and be the teacher's pet. And so some people never want to rock the boat, whereas others are fine having people be totally pissed off at them.
It's not about rocking the boat. It's just realizing that emotionally, that audiences don't care about what page number a scene is on. All the audiences are responding to is emotional veracity. They want to be sucked in. They want to feel a part of the universe. People go into it. Have you ever thought about this? People walk into a theater to watch other people on a screen act out stuff from life, and they just watch it. Like, why are they watching it? It's the weirdest thing when you go into a play in a theater. People are watching people argue on an imaginary stage. We're going to watch people act out life. It doesn't make any, it's like bizarre. But the reason why people are doing it is because it gives them meaning for their struggles. They go, I've done that. That's me. I fought cancer. Something happened to me. I won the state championship. I want to be able to win the state championship. I want to be able to come from nowhere. I want to believe. I want to fall in love. I want to survive the loss of a loved one. This can happen. I saw a story about somebody. I mean, this is why it gives us context so that we're not walking around going, why am I doing all this? You see the movie and you're like, other people have been dumped. Other people have been fired. Other people have been discriminated against. Other people, there's been injustice. I've suffered injustice. So have they. I can live. I'm going to fight. That's why people go to movies. So that's the only thing anybody cares about. They don't care if, the point of no return happens on page 63 or some crap. So if you're writing from that place, so that's not punk rock. That's just stories. That's storytelling. That's conservative storytelling, liberal, it's not to be political, but I'm just saying, and that's anybody, that's any ethos. That is the ethos. So if you're going to get in the business of the woman, the young lady in the front row who's like the person who gives the apple to the teacher, she better get, this is the business of emotion. It's the business of dealing of human identification with authentic stories. And that's heavy lifting. That requires like sharing of your life experience. It is demanding. It's just as, a surgeon it's emotionally demanding to be a nurse. It's emotionally demanding to be a trash man because you're like looking at people's trash. You're like, oh my God, they threw out this photo album. I mean, it's like everybody's got to deal with something and they're like, this is the thing. And it's like, this is the business. This is that business. So you can, you can't get around that. And when people try and get around that, then the great actor becomes the good actor and the great screenplay becomes an okay movie. But when you go there and you sell the whole thing and you don't shy away, then you're Kurosawa, then you're Eugene O'Neill, then you're writing something, then you're doing 12 Years a Slave, then you're fearless, then you're telling you're doing the thing that people go, that's awesome. Black Klansman, just like, amazing, honest movie, about the truth. It's a great movie and it's about the truth. And it's like, and it's emotional. It's disturbing. But it's like, but that's where that's Shakespeare. It's never changed. That's not new. That's not like avant-garde or anything. That's just how, and audiences are still responding to it because we're human beings and we still are responding to a good story. So,
Gordy, we have a quote here from your site and it says, the first thing you should know is BlueCat is very hard to win. Our readers are incredibly tough on our submissions because I've handpicked them and my standards are very high. We work very hard and writers who work as hard as we do stand a chance in the competition. So can you talk about that process?
Well, that's all true. I mean, it's very difficult to win a competition. I don't think I've ever won a competition. It's very difficult, obviously. Most of the writers that place in our competition, they work very hard on their scripts, you can tell. I mean, that's one of the things I recognize about submissions that do place. It's like they've obviously spent a lot of time rewriting, developing, and polishing and working on their scripts and making them function. So there's a lot of work that goes into it. In terms of the readers, we are very, very careful. We have every reader that I hire every reader, and I think we've built our reputation over the years of being very strict. We're actually just now going through the list again, making sure reviewing the work from that last year, weeding out anybody that's not up to our standards of what we want, the very best coverage, the very best feedback, because we send feedback to everybody, so they read everything, and we want to make sure that it's up to that standard. So I'm very tough on our readers. on who we hire. I think we pay our readers competitively with the very top competitions easily. I think we're right up there. So we do attract, I think, the best in terms of a reader that's available for a script competition. So I pick the readers, and after 20 years of judging BlueCat, my standards have, obviously elevated, and my own ability to assess something gets a little bit stricter and more difficult. So yeah, so you're going up against very, very tough readers that are very sophisticated, have a good voice themselves, know what they're talking about, and are aligned with my sense of analysis and judgment. And then your script is going to come to me, and I'm going to start looking at your writing from that vantage point. So yeah, I don't think it's like, it is a very well curated process. It's not, we don't take the scripts and send them off to a development company and who's promised to read them, and then they send back some of the ones that they liked, but we have no evidence as if they've read them. We don't do anything like this. There's a lot of extra work for BlueCat, but our entrants and our writers appreciate the transparent character of BlueCat, that your script has been read completely all the way through. The reader is someone who's giving you a fair shake, and that's something that doesn't necessarily always happen with with all submissions. Even in the top competitions, without naming any names, I'm fine with whatever anybody else is doing. But for me, as a writer, I want to know if somebody read my script. And that's where this came from with BlueCat. We started it 20 years ago, giving feedback to everybody, because I wanted, when people enter BlueCat, they know that their script has been read. So it's been adjudicated. And do we still have problems with readers, or somebody complains or whatever? Very, very rare now. And it's usually when somebody just doesn't like the fact that they don't like the feedback. And it's not really because of some issue. And if sometimes there's a rare time where there is an issue with a reader, maybe the reader has gotten sloppy, it's gotten maybe too negative, maybe a little bit too discouraging, which isn't really our style. We shoot straight, but we don't sugarcoat, and we don't get all mean, because that is just, nobody responds to that. So that's a good, I think that's a fair assessment of like why BlueCat is hard to win at. But I think at any competition that receives several thousand submissions is going to be difficult to come out on top. So
several thousand submissions, and this is per year, or do you have it several times a year?
No, we're annual, so we are always in the fall, and so it ranges over the years. We went through a little bit of a transition about 2 years ago, but yeah, we get a few thousand features. It's changed. We've gone over 4,000 in a couple years. So it's like, but now we accept pilots, and we accept half-hour pilots, hour pilots, and shorts. So our feature number has changed because now somebody has a pilot, they're like, well, I really want to send my pilot in this year. They're not forced to send in their feature. So our feature number changes as we get other categories, so as the other categories grow.
And so how long is the feedback? Like a few paragraphs?
About 600 words.
Oh, okay.
500, 600 words. So it's not short. I mean, it's a pretty decent length for feedback that is included in the entry fee. So it's not an add-on. It's part of the entry fee, and so it's not. Yeah, it's definitely the BlueCat tradition of doing that. I think that it's just part of the entry fee, and I think it's substantial feedback, and people like the feedback. That's why we're still around, because we're not affiliated with a large, like the Motion Picture Academy. Nichols is affiliated with a big, we're not affiliated with a standalone film festival or, like Sundance or whatever. I mean, we're just BlueCat. And the reason that we sort of stand with those top people, I think, is our track record, and but primarily because people get feedback. people get feedback, and so developing writers can get feedback. And a lot of people have never received feedback at all, and so they really like entering BlueCat for that feature.
And what's the time frame for the feedback?
Well, it comes back pretty quickly. I mean, for example, we have an early deadline that allows people to enter by the 30th of this month. I mean, this is going to probably be an old video soon, but it's like we usually have an early deadline where people can enter, and then they get their feedback back within like 2 or 3 weeks, and then they're able to revise their script and enter it by the final deadline. So a lot of people like to do that. They take in the feedback and then they enter it again, and then they can pick to have a new reader or the same reader, and that's what we've been doing that for several years too. So people like the sort of developmental process of entering BlueCat, and but that's grown over many years of us trying different things and trying to give people notes and when to give, how many times can somebody resubmit, and things like that we've had to change and correct. But the feedback comes pretty fast, relatively to within the course deadline. Even towards the end, if you enter by the final deadline, it usually comes back within a month, 6 weeks tops, depending on how many submissions we receive.
What would you say is the percentage of writers that will actually take those notes to heart and resubmit?
I think well, the resubmissions, it's pretty good. I mean, it's definitely a good chunk of people. Maybe I should know that, but it's like 30%. I mean, it's not half, but a lot of people, because a lot of people do well, they might get notes that they're like, oh, they really liked it. I'm gonna see how my script does in the competition. Or people are like, I don't want to do this, or they don't have the money to resubmit, unfortunately, or whatever. There's a lot of reasons why they might not. But I think our community tends to say, yes, we like the resubmission process. It's not something people are like, no, don't do this. We don't like this. They actually want it. So we've toyed with not having it, and people really like it. So we continue to do it.
Gordy, what are some common mistakes that are just simple, not so much the content of the screenplay, but things that people should be aware of when submitting that they maybe mess up?
Don't submit until you're ready. It's like, don't submit if you're not ready. And a lot of people want to be ready. Like we've talked about being impatient, wanting the fight to end, the fight for a great movie to end, and they're like, oh, I'm going to just submit it. And then they're bummed out that the feedback comes back and they're like, oh, they didn't respond. And it's like, work hard on your script. If you're not ready to submit to BlueCat, if you don't think it's your best work, don't submit it. Don't submit it. Just wait 3 months and submit to Nichols. Submit to Austin, submit to Sundance, submit to something else, submit to the local, state, regional contest that's 6 months from now when your script is really good and you're ready to do it and it's like beautiful and you're really excited about it. But if you're not ready, don't submit. That's the thing is that people send in stuff where they're not intimate with their material. They don't know, they don't even know. You can tell that they haven't gone back through it, that they haven't reread it, that it's overwritten, it's too long. And they're sort of like, well, I'm done, you look at it. And it's like, and then they get, then they have a response when we're like, yeah, we're not connected to it because it's confusing or it's not clear or whatever. And that's the thing that I think most people, again, you're in a rush to finish, and so you want the adrenaline of, I've just entered a competition, I'm making progress. It's sort of like, and it's better to just stay with the script and be patient and make sure that you know your script, be intimate with your script. I mean, the scripts that always come out on top with BlueCat now, after all these years, we get a lot more submissions. There are always scripts that are really tight as a drum. I mean, there are people that clearly they have worked really hard. Sometimes people write a draft and they proofread it and they send it in and it's like, and it does really well. And they're like, that was my second draft or whatever. But generally you can tell people have like worked really hard and they know everything in their script like the back of their hand. And I think that's the biggest thing that I would encourage people to make sure that you should know your script really well. And if you know your script very well, then you know it either has problems or it doesn't. And if you know it really well, then you know if it does have problems, then you shouldn't be submitting it to a competition. Unless you're just like, oh, I just want BlueCat's feedback or whatever. And a lot of people just do that. And they're like, I just want to get some notes now, you know?
Would you say when you were writing Love, Liza, were you obsessed with it? In that you were so in that world and you saw the one woman at the, like it meant a lot to you, maybe because you weren't working or whatever, and so you just focused everything. Do you want that from that same obsession and sort of like, this is everything right here on this piece of paper?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that I think most people that have written something special that does really well, they love it. I mean, the thing about screenwriting, and going back to like just my mission with BlueCat and the place in BlueCat in my life and the meaning is that people, you know, everybody we deal with is doing what they want to do. Like, it's their dream. It's their passion. It's really important to them. So I don't think people are like, well, I'm doing this screenwriting thing, but I really, really like being the stockbroker. That's what I really like doing, but I'm just working on screenplays because I don't know. You know, like I'm just doing it because I gotta do it. My mom wanted me to do it, but I really want to sell real estate. You know, it's like, it's not like that. So everybody we deal with is like, it's important to them. So everybody that I talk to, everybody's like invested. So there's not really an issue of like obsession, you know, investment, priority with anybody who's entering BlueCat. Everybody's entering BlueCat is thrilled and excited. They're not like, oh, I won, but I really, really wanted to, like, you know, open that paint store and you know, that didn't come through, and that's what I really wanted, and I run the screenwriting award instead, you know. So yeah. But
that being said, you say people rush to get their screenplay, and you can just tell that they haven't invested enough. So then what is that disconnect there? You can tell that this is what they want to be doing, but then they submit something sometimes, not everybody, of course.
Well, it's because, you know, because we have to learn that, you know, when you're a developing writer, you know, and you ignore the feedback that you're trying to give yourself, but you're like, no, but I want it to be done, and it's done. Let's go shoot it. You know, it's like, then you don't get the response. You go, oh, I should have kept rewriting. I knew it wasn't good. I knew I had problems with it, but I submitted it to BlueCat anyways. And then I got feedback, and clearly it's not ready yet. And then the seasoned writer, the more you know, developed writer, the one that is more mature, is like, I'm not going to submit that because that's not ready. I need to like make it ready, and then I put my best foot forward.
How do you monitor yourself in terms of wanting to put something out there and knowing, okay, you know what, I know myself, this isn't ready yet?
Yeah, I mean, I know like myself, like, yeah, I mean, I know that it's not good enough, and then it's, you know, or I want, you know, sometimes I'm like, I want to get feedback, so I'll have a table reading, or I'll have somebody read it. I'll be like, what do you think? You know, you want some feedback, but you're definitely not going to like send it off to the producer or the actress that's attached to your project or whatever until you've done a lot more, you know. And so there's certain stages where I'm like, you know, it's like, you already know that this is broken. You don't need to like send this out again, or you already have given yourself notes. So we give ourselves notes, then we get notes from other people, then we can move it down up the food chain. But generally we have to, you know, it's all about being honest and transparent with ourselves and having, you know, and knowing that. But you do learn that by sort of the early days when you're like, well, I want somebody to read this, and then you're like, okay, I think I'm going to wait next time before somebody reads it because that wasn't too pleasant. They didn't really respond. And by the way, P.S., I knew it wasn't ready, but I sent it to them anyways because I just wanted somebody to read it. You just want to like it makes it real when somebody else reads it. I wrote a screenplay, but after you sort of get over the novelty of that, then you start to wanting like to write better work.
So we had some YouTube questions come in earlier, and this is from Harry ML. That's the username. How to make characters consistent but act in surprising ways.
You know, writers have impulses inside them that they often don't follow because they want to stay on track with an outline, or they want to stay on track with a beat sheet or a plan, or they have expectations for what is appropriate for a certain story or a kind of genre that they're writing. And so they ignore the impulses or the intuitive thoughts that they have, the imagination sparks. And those are the things, when you surprise yourself with an idea, you need to embrace it. You know, whenever something comes up in your mind, you know, we self-censor a lot. And we're like, well, I mean, he can't rip her shirt off right there, can he? And it's just like, no, that's not I mean, maybe not. It's gotta be something else. And it's just like, well, maybe he does. And maybe she like grabs his wrist after that, because then you're like, and then what happens? Then what happens? Then what happens? Then you're going down the rabbit hole and you're making things up and you're surprising yourself. That's how we create, you know, characters. Obviously, we want the character to still be the character. Would the character maybe want to rip the shirt off or whatever, or grab the paint can or run out of the car and start running out of the field when they were supposed to stay in the car in the outline, and then they started running toward the football field when you started to write it? Are you going to allow that to happen? And I think writers have to listen to their instrument, listen to their imagination. You know, you don't talk about imagination a lot when we talk about the craft of screenwriting. We don't really talk about imagination, like what that is, and like how we like, what if, that whole thing. And we don't cultivate that because it really is so messy and so nonlinear and spontaneous that it's hard to write a book about it. Like, it's hard to organize a system, a beat sheet or a formula about imagination. But that really is how you create surprising revelatory behavior. It's sort of like, and then what if this happens? And you're just like, oh my God, you know, we were talking about the Meg and how people like kind of just, you know, are like, well, I'm not gonna see this shark movie with Jason Statham, and it's a genre movie, like silly, stupid movie, right? But there were a couple moments in there that were completely surprising. And I thought, A+. That's stuff that doesn't happen in movies, where it's like the audience completely fell into a lull and then the plot went left. And it was like, and it wasn't like, oh, give me a break. It was like, oh, this is plausible and it's arresting and it's a surprise. And it very likely probably came from the imagination of their author going, well, and then they thought of it and they thought, well, why not? Let's try that. And embracing it, because initially you come up with something like that and you go, oh, you know, an audience will be like, what? You know, so you know, I think that's what it is. It's like paying attention to your own impulses and listening to your own voice. You listen to your own voice and not have it, and let it be the primary thing in the creative act of your script. Then that will allow for these surprises to happen.
It reminds me of when Sharp Objects first came out. I didn't see it when it first initially came out, but I watched people's reactions on Twitter. And by seeing that, then I was like, okay, then I want to see it.
Yeah.
Because they were like shocked, and let's assume these are real Twitter accounts.
Right.
People they couldn't believe it. You know, and Amy Adams can play so many amazing characters, but she was playing a damaged character that was so fun to watch. Right.
So absolutely. I mean, that's what we want to do, and that all comes from someone allowing themselves to be creative. You know, you've got to say, like, you know, I'm going to just have her like run out of the car, and that's going to totally screw up my outline, but it's really cool. But maybe I could have a lot more work to do because I'm making this decision. But I'd rather do a lot more work and not be lazy and embrace it. because it's really revelatory and awesome. But people don't want to do that. They're like, oh, if I ever do that, then everything's screwed up, and so I'm just going to stay on course on the thing that's not surprising, and people are predicting, because I'm predicting everything because I'm following a roadmap. You lose the roadmap and you start flying by the seat of your pants. That's like, well, what's going to happen? I don't know what's going to happen.
Do you think that's really laziness, or that's wanting to be, again, the teacher's pet versus the Johnny Rotten in the back, that wants to...
Well, of course it's fear. Of course there's fear of like, oh, I need to do it this way or it's not going to work out. But I think mostly writers they won't upend their outline, or they won't upend their plans or whatever. I mean, a lot of them will say, well, look, if it goes off my script, I always embrace it, but I don't know. I think a lot of people, I think we write outlines a lot of times to make the process faster, but at the expense of something being more surprising and revelatory. A lot of things don't need to be outlined. If they're character driven, you can sort of discover a lot of really special moments in a story by just seeing where it goes. A heist movie, a murder mystery, that becomes more difficult to just sort of follow character impulses, because you've got more of a puzzle to figure out. It's like, okay, how is this going to work? But,
So this question came in from Write Heroes, that's the YouTube user. Does a no-name person who submits to the competition with no previous sales, no contacts, have a chance of winning if the screenplay is good?
Absolutely. I mean, almost everybody who submits is at that same situation, and I don't ever look at names or agents or anything like that when if somebody is like, absolutely, everybody has the same chance. And, if anyone is submitting to BlueCat and they already have, so most of the people are in that case, and so absolutely not. There's no prejudice towards people that have no name or haven't done anything yet.
Okay, perfect. Moving on, CCH is the YouTube user. Are there any BlueCat submissions that, after all this time, still stand out in your memory, and if so, why?
Absolutely. There's several scripts that stand out, and they stand out because I was overwhelmed by them, sort of in awe of them. They're just special, they're beautiful. Some of the ones that were finalists or didn't totally make it, but I've just never forgotten them. It also happens with students that I've taught. I've taught a lot, and there's scripts that I've never forgotten. And it's usually the original voice. It's somebody tried something that was way outside the box and that you just have never seen before, and they were able to pull it off. There was something really brave, and I believe everybody has the capacity to take that risk. I don't think that there's some people that are like, I'm not brave. It's like everybody has the capacity. Everybody has that story that they feel uncomfortable telling, or they think that it's like, no one's going to make this. And most of the scripts that I remember and that do well with BlueCat are people that are like, you know what, I'm going to write this even though it's embarrassing, because they're going to think it's about me, or they're going to think that they're going to think I'm interested in something like this, or I'm going to write this and there's no chance, why am I wasting my time on this, or this is not something anyone's going to be interested in, or no one's going to buy it. Somebody just says, I think that this is special, I think this is different, I've never seen this before, I think this is funny, I think this is beautiful, I think this is tragic, I think this is awful, or I think this is so scary, I'm going to write this. And those people tend to produce work that really stays with you. And Anna Lily Amirpour's work, The Stones, that won BlueCat, she ended up taking some of those characters and making Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. They appeared in she sort of repurposed those characters and that little bit of that world and the feeling of that world in the movie, in her debut movie, Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. And will never forget crying at the end of that script, getting to the end of that script and the tears welling up. And I remember exactly the couch I was sitting on. I remember Gary, the tennis coach that got made by Sony as Balls Out, and very much changed, the script very much changed, but when it won, I remember laughing. I still remember where I was when I was reading it and laughing out loud, the first couple of pages of that script. And, I gave that script to a producer, and Sony ended up getting involved with that and making that movie with Sean William Scott. And it's called Balls Out now, and that was the script. So these kind of experiences, yeah, absolutely, they stay with you. It's always because somebody wrote what they wanted to write, and they had no fear about it. And any misgivings, any anxiety, any second thoughts, they just said, screw it, I think this is going to be a cool movie, and they wrote it.